Well, hey everyone, welcome back to Shop Dog Fabrication. So today what we're going to be talking about is kind of the LA to Magnum swap. I've done it on my car, and I run it as a carbureted car, not as a fuel injected Magnum swap. You can run it as a fuel injected swap, that's up to you. You can figure out the wiring and using the ECU and trying to do tunes and all that kind of stuff. Or you can go the route that I've gone. I basically use the short block, and I've got a different set of heads on it. I run roller rockers and a dual plane intake, that kind of stuff. And I'll walk through my engine, my setup, what I've done to it. Because this will lead you to, do you want to do a basic, 318 or 360, Magnum swap? Or do you want to do a stroker motor and, a few things? And I'll walk you through the differences between the flex plates, internal, external balance a little bit. I'll walk you the difference of the camshafts. I'll walk you through the difference of the timing covers, a couple of cylinder head options, that kind of thing. What I'm doing and what you can do, or you can do whatever you want. But I'll just give you what I've done and kind of show you some differences to maybe help you along a little bit. Now, there's a great website out there called I believe it's called MagnumSwap.com. He's got a lot of good information. The website's been out there for several years. So I want to give a shout out to those guys because I referenced them as well. But this video is just to kind of show you some of the subtle differences maybe that they don't kind of get into. So again, mine is a 5.9 Magnum. I believe this engine, or this short block here, is right around 93, or I'm sorry, 93. Short block. The reason I say it is because it still had the old style harmonic balancer with the serpentine, but the pulley unbolted. And I think in 94, the was a one-piece harmonic balancer and not a two-piece. So my other engine that I had was a 99, and it had the one-piece harmonic balancer. But I'm not going to use a serpentine setup. I'm using a simple V-belt. I have manual steering. I only run the alternator, and that's it. So I run one belt, basically two pulleys, or three pulleys, I guess, water pump, crank, and alternator, but one belt on it. So with that said, let me kind of take the camera here, flip it around, and I'll walk you around a couple things I had to grind off and remove. To clearance for like my headers, also for the starter, and I'll talk about the heads and a few other things. Take two. So I'm running a simple knockoff dual plane intake manifold. I'm not running the real good Edelbrock. I'm running basically just the knockoff dual plane. You can get them for like 180 bucks, I think. I will be running I don't have it installed yet, but I'll be running a Carter high volume fuel pump on my engine, which will go right here. I just leave it off while I'm installing it so I don't break it and cause damage. For the cylinder heads, I'm running Edelbrock cylinder heads. So these are, I believe, there's only these, and there's one other manufacturer, I can't think of who they are right now, that does make a cylinder head for the Magnums. But I'm running a set of Edelbrocks on mine. Now the timing cover, you can run the LA timing cover, not a problem, it'll bolt right up, and that's, why, but you need to put in the fuel pump eccentric. You will have to run a different camshaft than the one that the factory Magnum came from because the snout is too short. And I'll show you two camshafts side by side here in just a moment. In fact, let me walk over and show you. So you can see these are both roller camshafts. That's one of the nice things about going to a Magnum block. The difference is this is an LA camshaft, and you can see it has a much longer snout. And you can see this is the Magnum, or with the shorter snout. The problem that you run into is by the time you bolt, your timing chain onto this, you have no room for this. This is your fuel pump eccentric. So basically you can see this is keyed here. So you'll have your timing chain on, and then you'll put your eccentric on, and then you'll tighten the bolt on. So you need to run a camshaft that has the longer snout. So, there's two things you can do. I run the Lanati Voodoo, which has a longer snout, so I can basically run this eccentric. Or I believe Cams has one that you can also run that will have the long snout. Or if you want to run the stock Magnum camshaft, but you want to run a mechanical fuel pump, there is an extension that you can purchase. I think you can find them at like Mancini Racing. You know, that you can order that little snout that will extend it, and then you can bolt on your eccentric. So we've covered the kind of the intake. We've covered the heads. Like I said, now you can buy, you can run your factory head if you want. The problem you'll run into is many times you will break off the exhaust studs when you remove your exhaust manifolds, and or the other option is an EQ head. They call them. They're an aftermarket head because of some of the issues that you hear about with the cracking of the intake manifold or the seat between the intake and exhaust. You can get an EQ head. Unfortunately, the only one they make now is for the Magnum bolt pattern for the cylinder head. You can see on the cylinder heads on a Magnum, the bolts go straight down. Where on the LA style, they go on at a diagonal. You can see this is dual drilled for an LA style intake or a cylinder head or a Magnum cylinder head. Now the Edelbrock does not do this. So basically, if you order the new EQ style, you only get the Magnum bolt pattern, and you really only have a couple of choices of intake manifolds too. You really only have this one. You can find maybe a Mopar performance one, factory one, but those, when guys sell them, they're like selling for $350 or so. Or Indy Racing may sell something. I think they sell a single plane as well. But basically I just run the dual plane knockoff, and I actually milled out the center of my intake manifold a little bit. And I have a video on how to do that if you want to watch it. Basically, I took a wood router, and it worked awesome actually, where I was able to mill out the center portion of it a little bit to increase my RPM. So let me walk you over here and show you what I'm talking about, breaking exhaust studs. So you can see here on this one, when I pulled these heads off that short block, this one's broke here. You can see this one's for a little further down. That one broke in the head, and I was able to get those two out. Then you can see on this one as well, it looks like I only broke the one on this head, and I was able to get all these out. So chances are you're going to be breaking exhaust bolts, and you're going to need to take the time to, drill them out, rethread them, that kind of thing, if they're good. You may want to take them to a machine shop to get them done, or just buy the EQs that are, pretty much ready to go, that you can get them for like, I think $1,000 for a pair. Now the bore and stroke on the block and the crank is exactly the same as an LA. So, you can basically easily get aftermarket pistons, stroker kits. If you want to do a stock rebuild, you can get stock pistons, rings, or if you need to get the block punched out, you can still get oversized rings, oversized pistons. The crank again, is the same crank as in an LA, so that's not a problem. I basically run a water pump off an LA motor. This is an aluminum one. This is an aftermarket Harmonic Balancer. Trying to remember the company's name, but they're only like $90. It works pretty good. You will need to balance it or make sure the weights are proper, because there's internally balanced and externally balanced. If you do a stroker motor, most stroker are internally balanced setups. Stock Magnums are externally balanced. So you need to make sure you use the flex plate from a Magnum, or B&M makes a SFI plate that you can buy that's also externally balanced for a Magnum or LA. Or you can get this Harmonic Balancer. This is not an SFI Harmonic Balancer, but they do make them. Right now, like I said, this was about $100. And you can see I'm just running, simple, V-band. that's my, my engine in a nutshell. So let me talk about a couple other things. Oil pump shafts, by the way, the exact same, LA versus Magnum. I am running an MSD distributor. So LA or Magnum, an MSD will work, or you can run a stock Chrysler, distributor if you like, if you're able to find one. Pick them up probably dirt cheap, but anyway, I'm running an MSD setup. Flex plates. Here's the stock Magnum. You can see the balance weight on here. So you will need to run a neutral balance converter, not a weighted converter. So the one thing you'll need to do, elongate one of these holes for the torque converter. So that way you can bolt the torque converter up to this. Or here is what I was telling you about. Here is if you want to run externally balanced Magnum. You can see here is the part number 10239 from B&M. And this is an SFI plate, so you can, because I've heard of, these cracking out. So I went ahead and got the SFI, harmonic or flex plate for the back. Again, the timing chain cover, you can see there's no provision here for mechanical fuel pump. So if you want to keep the original timing cover and run a electric fuel pump, you can do that. You'll still need to run a regulator, just a low volume, low pressure fuel pump, not a high pressure. Or like I said, you can see here in the stock timing cover, here's the provision for the mechanical pump. You just need to make sure you put on that guy, which again, you can pick up from like Mancini Racing, and bolt it on to your camshaft. Now you can also get your original camshaft reground. You can go to, send it into a place like Oregon Camshafts, tell them what your setup is, and they can regrind your factory camshaft if that's the route you want to go as well. So that's just another option. So basically, this bolts up right up to my 904 transmission. So I run a 904, bolts right up, no problem. Again, I run a 3500 stall converter. You can see I've got one header in here. I got to set the other one back in a few minutes so I can drop the engine in there. But I run a 3500 stall converter. A couple things to note. My headers. So here's kind of where the truck motor mounts were. Right here, I had to grind this area down. On the this would be the passenger side. I had to do the same thing on the driver's, same thing here on the driver's side, grind this down so the headers were clearance. And then also I had to clearance the block back here because I run the mini starter, and so that the mini starter will clear with the 904 transmission. So this is on the driver's side, and then over here again on the passenger side here. So motor mounts. Let me move a couple things here. So these are LA motor mounts that I had. Now you have to modify one of them, and I don't remember if it was driver or passenger. Now I want to say this was driver's side. No, passenger side. I believe it was. I had to modify the passenger side motor mount. I had to add this extension here so it would bolt to the actually this is the driver's side. So I had to modify this wing. You can see up here, you can see the two bolts here and then the single up here. So basically, I had to modify this, add that extension to it. So when I bolt this up in here like so, I've got 3 bolts holding that motor mount on. So I had to modify that one mount to work. So these are just some of the basics, guys. Pretty much the head gaskets from an LA and Magnum, not a problem to interchange those for the most part. Your timing cover gaskets are pretty much interchangeable between an LA and a Magnum. Your intake manifold gaskets, you can get LA intake manifold gaskets. However, you will need to modify those too slightly. So the problem here is with the, again, because of the vertical, head bolts versus, the angled intake manifold bolts being vertical, straight up and down, right? Versus these are more horizontal. These openings you need to elongate like this on an LA intake manifold gasket to work with the bolts being vertical. So you can order LA ones, you just need to know that you need to modify them so they'll work. That's the only big deal there. So that's the only thing I ran into on those. You can run the one-piece oil pan gasket if you like. I'm running the old cork style. Oh, oil pan. So I'm running a 6-quart oil pan on mine from Kevco. So it's a real nice oil pan. Just Google up Kevco. Much cheaper than the Milidons. Granted, the Milidon, they're 7-quart. But this is a really nice 6-quart pan. Comes with the, the oil pickup and everything. You will need to change or somehow run a stud on the one middle main bolt. The reason being is, there's an extension on the pickup tube in that, so to help support it. So I basically bought a Milidon main bolt kit for this, and it had the one nice stud, and it worked really good. So anyway, Kevco oil pan, you may need to order a Milidon stud kit for your mains. If you want to go this route, that would be the only other thing that I would suggest. I swapped out the LA style drain tube here, or oil, I can't even think about it. Anyway, I swapped my LA oil tube here as well from the Magnum. The Magnum's much longer. Like I said, I put in the LA. Otherwise, everything else is pretty well straightforward. I pretty much was able to get a lot of the stuff either on Rock Auto, those types of places for some of the gaskets and things like that. So anyway, you can do, and I forgot to mention this earlier, is the valve covers. You can run LA style valve covers on your Magnum heads. So they will bolt on. There is a difference though, kind of in the gasket area. They overlap a little bit, not a ton. So you have to be careful and just double check to make sure you have any oil leaks. But you can run, like I said, LA style valve covers on your Magnum heads. And these are a set of old Mickey Thompsons that I have here. So for you guys that want to do the Magnum swap, you can see I'm using the Magnum valve cover, or the Magnum valve cover gasket with the Magnum valve cover. And if you'll notice, you'll see, I don't know if you can see my finger wiggling around, but basically, there's a gap here. So what you'll need to do is take some silicone to kind of seal this area up if you want to use the Magnum gaskets with the LA valve cover. Otherwise, you'll need to run some LA valve cover gaskets. So what I've done here is I put an LA valve cover gasket on the Magnum head. And as you can see, we've got pretty good overlap. There's just a little bit, of an area, on either end here. But once you get some pressure on it, it should seal up just fine. So I'm going to run the LA style valve cover gasket with my LA valve cover to give that look versus running the Magnum style. But anyway, I just wanted to show you kind of the subtle differences between the gaskets and what you may encounter. Now the other thing I did is I ended up getting a brand new fuel tank because when I got this car, it was a shell. And I welded on, a sump in the back. And you can see the reason I wanted to go with a sump was for two reasons. One, when I race the car, obviously when the fuel comes back, I wanted to make sure I had no fuel starvation issues. The other reason is the return line there. So someday if I want to run fuel injection, I can, here's my feed line, and then I have a return line that I can run back in the tank as well. if I need to, for fuel injection. Now, granted, I probably should return it up to the top, but that's just another thought where I can run the return line in the future if I decide to run fuel injection. So I hope you like this little short video. It's not perfect, right? But I just wanted to give you guys a few little tips and that things that I ran across while I was doing a LA to Magnum swap on my setup. Like I said, you can stroke these things just like in LA. Unfortunately, you don't have as many options with a Magnum versus an LA. You're only limited to a couple cylinder head options. You're really only limited to a couple of intake manifold options. Unless you drill the heads for an LA style pattern, then yes, it opens you up to more options. But these heads are like $1,000 a piece for these aluminum heads, and I end up getting a really good deal up from a guy that bought them, never used them, so I got a really good price on them. Otherwise, I would have gone with the EQ heads. So anyway, just wanted to pass along some things that I came across as I was doing my swap from LA to a Magnum. Like I said, I had a 318 in this car when it came with originally. It was not running. The cylinders were all nasty and stuff from sitting for 20 plus years, and so I decided to go with the Magnum route. Anyway, I hope you guys liked the little short video here. Hopefully, like I said, it gave you some good tips and tricks, and thanks for taking the time to watch. Take care, guys.